Anybody there?
We are back for this week's edition of So You Want to Be in IT, podcast aimed at those starting out their journey in the vast world of IT. We talk about navigating the world of IT as a beginner, from how to climb the ladder, how to break in, how to, what to study for, certifications, best practices, and literally everything else in between. So, you know who I am. I'm your host, Pat.
Hey, Dean here. Nice to have you again.
Dean's over there doing his thing. So episode 5, Dean, we just keep rolling until someone tells us to stop. So we have a lot to talk about and figured what's a good way to get out here and do our thing and just put it out there onto the interwebs. So first couple of weeks, we talked a bit about breaking in, various things like how to find your niche, help desk roles we touched on, how to stand out, like I said, best practices, even touch on a few certification bits and pieces as well, Dean.
Absolutely, yeah.
This week, I think we're going to flip the coin a little bit, flip the script, as you will, and talk about applying for jobs, looking for interviews, doing your homework on the company before walking in the door, because I think that's a big piece, Dean. I
like that.
Guys or gals, try to be more inclusive. I always say guys, but I feel like it's, talking to everybody.
It's a collective term.
It is.
It's a collective term these days.
Yeah, I feel like
I've gone to a group of ladies and said guys, and they weren't incredibly insulted.
Yeah.
I probably should have. My grammar could have been better, but yeah, it definitely is a universal term.
That's right. I hope so.
Now. So yeah. So
yeah, guys are looking out there and seeing what's out there on sites like Indeed or Monster, Career Builder. I'm guessing Monster and Career Builder are still around. I'm kind of showing my age a little bit, but
yeah, I think you are a little there.
Might be.
Not like I've applied for a job for a while, but good grief,
I know.
Yeah, they were like back in like 2013. I'm not too sure what it is this decade. I think it's like Dice and
Dice is a big one.
What else is? Yeah, what else is out? I know LinkedIn's huge.
LinkedIn is got a real big footprint now. It didn't used to.
Yeah, now you can actually apply for jobs directly on there.
Yeah, which is nice. Dice and
Indeed's still kicking around. I think you're still right about Indeed. Yeah.
Yep.
But Monster Builder, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I've not seen that for a while. But I'm glad I know what you mean though, because like that went back down memory lane. Yeah. I'm like, good grief, I've not had an email from them for a while. My spam filters must be working while they're out of business.
I hear you. So yeah, guys get out there and they look for jobs and they see what's out there. So we just wanted to kind of talk a couple tips and try to give Dean and I's 2 cents into making that search, that interview process that set you up for success and make that transition a little easier, or that process a little easier, I should say, to finding that good fit for you. So for me, and I have a couple just jotted down here, I'm just going to spew them out. Dean, jump in.
Yeah, hear it. Let's hear it.
The first thing is you have to find openings, find jobs that fit your skill set, right? So if you're a network guy, or if you're a VM guy or security guy, look for roles in that sort of silo. Even if you're just breaking in, right, the help desk and things of that nature. And to be honest with you, like on a help desk role, you're going to touch a lot of things, so it's less crucial for help desk, I guess. But like you have to still find that opening that fits your skill set, whether that's hardware, whether that's software. So basically, if you're a network guy, don't go apply for a programming or a Java job, because that's just not where your bread's going to be buttered, sort of thing. So, and obviously, it's not going to be a perfect fit, but find a job find a job that's going to be as close to what you'd be, interested in, or what your niche is as possible, even though you're going to climb the ladder, that way you're going to touch a lot of things. Find something that's sort of close to your silo now.
Yeah, I agree with that. You got to definitely keep it close to your chest in some respect.
Yep.
Because you are being paid to execute a particular task. Although in saying that, every organization I've worked for, regardless of your skill set, there is some sort of training involved where, like, if you get a CCNA, that's all well and good, but companies and organizations have their way of doing things, and you can't do stuff Cisco's way, if that makes sense.
Correct.
Therefore, there's training and procedures that, and usually a mentor that you're assigned where you have to go and do it via the business's way. You know, like that just gets you in the door for technology. Now you need to know how the business makes money, and they have procedures and ways of doing things. And that's the next step in your career, is basically learning and obtaining that knowledge. So although in saying that, I get what you're saying about the Java and stuff, but even with programming jobs there, I know you have to know programming, don't get me wrong, because they're going to expect a result like a program at the end of the day, or added subroutines or functions or whatever assistant to the program if you're on a sort of a greater developer build or something of that nature. However, if you're keeping to the subject of our field, networking, yeah, there's always, regardless of your level, like my mentor was a CCIE, and when he joined, he wasn't allowed to just do stuff on his own, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So there are, it doesn't matter what level you are, the company still has a way of doing things.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think you're right. So, and to be honest with you, I've started to see it more and more. It's not necessarily lack of talent out there, but like I see a lot now of guys, they have the heavy Cisco stuff, and I'm just taking this example because that's the vein we live in. But they have a heavy Cisco experience and things of that nature, and then they come in and they're into an environment that does Aruba or does FortiGate, or doesn't necessarily.
Sure.
The company themselves doesn't have Cisco gear, but at the end of the day, networking is networking, right? TCP still works the same way as it does on Aruba, than it does FortiGate, than it does Palo Alto. They're grabbing you for your experience from a broader perspective and not vendor specific.
Correct.
So again, you have to know your environment, know what you're walking into, and I think that comes with a lot of preparation on the interviewee. On their particular homework before they step into the room, right? So, and that's kind of the other piece of this, or the next point. So do your homework before you walk into that room, right? So look these people up on LinkedIn, look the company up. Glassdoor, is a big one nowadays for ratings and peer review, both employees and non-employees.
When you say look, what are you looking for? Because it's very subjective to look. Like, everyone can look, but what are the things you particularly look at?
I look for a couple things. So I look, especially on LinkedIn, I'm looking at who are the major players, or who currently works there, right? What their roles are, how long they've been there. Because if you're going for a help desk job or whatever, and again, you don't know how big the team is you're walking into, but if this is the third posting in a year for a help desk guy, either they're churning through people left and right, or they're growing like gangbusters, and you have to kind of decipher which pool you're going to play in. So, I mean, I've been a part of both. I've been a part of, you have these companies that all of a sudden just blow up at the seams, and their guys are working, 60-hour weeks, and they don't have the help. Or I've walked into places where, all right, this is the third network engineer they've had because the other two quit 6 months in because the company is so helter-skelter, scatterbrained that they can't keep their people. So,
right, that's fair.
So I looked at LinkedIn, I looked at, major players, I look at how long they've been there, I look at their roles, I look at, or anything of that matter, their social media presence as a whole. So, like, from a business perspective, A, what do they do? B, are they active on social media trying to get people engaged, or do they do a lot with the community, things of that nature, give backs, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And then on Glassdoor, right? Glassdoor, the other side of that is, okay, Glassdoor is the peer review site, right? So, say I work for a company ABC, now you have, people from all walks of life, not just technology. You have everybody that's ever worked there, right? Across major specialties or whatever, HR and down to customer service reps or whatever. They're saying, hey, I like this about this company, the pros and cons, etc. And it's like a star rating, right? So, they get 3.5 stars out of 5, whatever it is. So obviously I'm doing that groundwork as well, because Dean, you and I know public perception is very big in people's decisions, sure. Right? So they got to, people obviously they feel more needed or feel more at peace with themselves if they work for a company that they like, and they're ready to go that extra mile because company treats them good and has a good public perception, et cetera, et cetera. So not everyone's like that, but most people take pride in where they lay their head, sort of thing. So so I look for things like that and say, okay, look, and to be honest with you, I don't really care, and maybe you're different. I don't really care if if I'm on Glassdoor and I see people in the HR department really had a rough time at this place because I'm not in HR. Like that's not where I'm walking in the door. I mean, to a degree you have to sort of thing, but that's not my initial, oh my God, I'm not going to work there because an HR assistant was, was overworked. Like that's.
No, I think you should be cautious of it because it definitely does.
Yep.
There's definitely a highlight of company culture there.
It feeds into the culture. That's correct.
If HR are being overworked, then
right.
no other. You've got no chance.
Right, yeah. Maybe that was a bad example.
You're in for a wild ride. But I get your point.
Yeah. So that was just my example of, hey, you got to look at your department or what, the IT as a whole differently than how someone in marketing is is overworked or whatever. Sure, yeah. Like there's different, there's
whatever
different,
it might be.
There's different temperatures there, I guess is what I'm trying to get across. But obviously,
be aware of it, but don't let it completely inhibit your choice.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it does hold some weight, but make sure it doesn't hold the most weight, sort of thing, in your decision. Sure. And then obviously, like I said, know who your major players are, your stakeholders, right? Your CEOs or your C-level execs, things of that nature. Just in case you're asked about them, things of that nature, because people love to throw out hiring managers love to throw out, hey, do you know what we do, or do you know John Smith, that he's our CEO and he does XYZ, and it'd be nice to say, yeah, I know he gave to the Red Cross, whatever, or whatever organization or give back. It's a nice tie-in. It shows that you've done your homework before you step in the room.
Yeah, I like to ask what your favorite product is, especially for companies I work for.
There you go.
And lots of them what? What's your favorite product, mate? You must own something.
Yep, exactly. No, that's all good. That's all good. The other thing is like the interview process, or when you sit down in that room with whoever you're sitting down with, the interview is just as much for them as it is for you. So they're obviously, it's a two-way street in that particular aspect. So they're asking questions of me to try to get a couple things across, right? Company culture fit is a big one, right? And then obviously technical skills, and you're not showing up for an IT job as a mechanic sort of thing. And then that's also the ideal situation for me to ask questions about them, right? So what is company culture? You got
to hammer them too.
You really you almost have to, because that's a major decision, right? So
that's how you get so much insight as well. And then you also have to lay it on thick as well.
Yeah.
I've got other interviews. This is the third one I had this week or this morning. I'm theatrical.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
I like to play the theatrics. Start invoking people. Like, it's a game. Like, start figuring out what the culture's like by saying things like that and see what that does.
Right.
Do they like that? Don't they like that?
Right.
Is that going to be a problem? Like, you're entitled to look at other positions and openings, especially when you're going to be working a minimum of 40 hours a week.
I agree.
At a place. So decide well.
No, I agree. And you're right. It's 100%. It's just as much for you to get to know them as it is for them to know you. So come with questions prepared, right? So, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Dean likes the theater aspect of it, but it doesn't have to be crazy. Just a couple of questions. So then it shows interest, right? It shows them that, you've taken the time to do your research and to ask XYZ, whatever questions are important to you, right? So, things of that nature, absolutely. And it can be a little bit of both, right? Because I feel like question, is there an on-call rotation? That I feel like is a technical question and a company culture fit, because a lot of people, some do, some don't. And then how often is it, right? So are you on call every week, like all the time? Or is it like every 2 weeks or every 6 months, whatever that is? And that's going to depend on how big your team is, right? So
that's why I like to ask, if there's an engineer in the room who's doing a job like similar to you,
I
like to ask, like, what's a day or a week in a life as an engineer? And that's where you really gauge what the heck you're doing.
Agreed.
Like, you really gain a lot of insight on that, and that's where like the rubber really meets the road in the respect of like what this all means, like the studying, the applying for the job after the interview, like what am I actually going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? Because before that, honestly, you don't know.
Yeah, no.
You ain't got a clue.
No, you're completely blind.
Like, you don't even know what you're going to be doing. Sometimes, like, I've seen and heard of stories where people have gone into engineer jobs and, like, they don't even touch a Cisco switch.
Yeah, right.
But that might be a big problem for some people. They might
Agreed.
just be designing.
Agreed.
And they don't know that. Like, they don't touch no gear. Like, they touch no toys. And for me, like, that would be a problem at the start of my career.
Yeah.
Like, but some people go through that and they're just like, yeah, I'm not going to be, what do you mean I'm not going to be touching stuff?
Right.
Like, no. We have other people for that. I'm like, yeah, that ain't going to work for me. I need to, like, get my hands dirty now and then. Maybe not every day.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. And, you know, so I think these are good questions to ask, and especially, like, even at the help desk level, right? Know what you're sort of walking into. Like, how many calls are you expected to take, right? Is it 10 a day? Is it 100 a day? Whatever that is. So, like, you know, you sort of want to walk out of there with some expectation. And if they say, hey, you're going to sit at a phone and, you know, for 8 hours a day or whatever it is, and you know, answer it as they come, which obviously that's a help desk role, but, like, how busy, like, what's the average call look like? Or what's the average day look like? Like, how many calls do they take in a day? So, I mean, if you're pushing yourself 60, 70 calls a day, that's a huge order. And you're like, oh my God, I'm, like, ready to, you know, stab somebody by the time you get out of there. So
it's not even that as well. It's what's expected. Because I've been in help desk roles, maybe not directly in IT, but telecoms, where you had to pick up a phone and do upgrades too.
Okay.
So if you got a heavy call flow and then you're expected to do sort of OPEX work, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot. That's a lot for one person.
It is. Yeah, it's a lot. No, 100%.
So,
I agree.
So you have to you really have to like, your job might not just be, you might be help desk, but you might not just be answering the phone. You could be doing, like, network upgrades or
multiple things. Yeah,
doing tickets on top of that as well.
Yeah,
and then you have to answer a phone in the middle of a ticket.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Sucks.
Like, yeah, you don't know what you're going to be doing. Yeah, juggling. What about how many different projects you have to swing from one to another to? Because I've never worked in a job where, like, you're just doing one thing, and, like, you're usually juggling, like, 5 or 6 different types of projects, and then there's 5 or 6 different project managers who are basically up your ass trying to figure out what's going on. So, you know, you need to. There's a lot of
it's a lot of juggling.
That needs to be there's a lot of juggling. There's a lot of understanding that, honestly, you need to get to terms of what the company expectations are in an interview, because that's your first insight to real company culture and, like, the actual team. Because it's all well and good seeing it on lights and glimmer on Instagram and Facebook and the on the websites and stuff like that, but what do they do every day to make money is a completely different story. It's
a big one. Yeah, no, you ain't gonna tell me twice. Yeah, so no, I've been in roles like that too. You know, not necessarily like, you know, upgrades and things of that nature, but, you know, my very first IT job was a tech support rep for a local cable company here, and at that time, cable modems were really starting to take off, and it was massive. I mean, I remember I sort of challenged myself back in the day, you know, when I was at this place, you know, trying to reach 70 calls a day, and I hit like 63 or 64 calls a day, and that was just insanity. Like, you know, you didn't even get up to, like, go pee. Like, it was one of those things. Like, you know, you tried to hit your benchmark, and, you know, not that they expected that, right? You know, they just, you know, it was a fun challenge to see if I could do it. But, you know, it's a lot. And that was just answering calls and you know, talking to, you know, Joe Schmo that, you know, couldn't get their cable modem online. You know, that sort of thing. It wasn't internal to an IT organization. It was end users and, you know, trying to, you know, have grandma put batteries in a remote, you know, sort of thing. So it was a tough, you know, some of those days were tough, and people are relentless. You know, they just, when something doesn't work, especially in the residential and the consumer market, something doesn't work, man, it doesn't matter if it's your problem or not, you are on the other end, you're going to hear about it. So, like, those were rough days, you know, trying to make everybody happy and just help people. And you're getting thrashed every day, all day long. And it's like, oh man, this is kind of crazy. But the expectation is a big one, because if you don't know what's expected of you, you don't know what your goals are and if you're meeting them or not. And that's a that's a big one, at least for me, because I like to know where I stand. Like a lot, I work for a lot of places that just, I don't want to say that they just let you cruise or whatever, but there's no line in the sand. So you don't know if you're doing well or not. So getting those expectations and, revisiting those expectations every, whatever that is, quarterly or every 6 months, get them, know what you're doing. Because if you're not hitting a mark and people wait or management waits till 6 months to tell you, they're not doing you a service either, because you could have known that 3 months ago and you could have worked on it, that sort of thing. So knowing those expectations are a very big piece for me, because then that way everybody knows where they stand, all the stakeholders, you, boss, and whoever else may come into the equation. That's a big one. So expectations are huge. And then obviously, doing all this homework ahead of time, right? The interview itself becomes easier. There's less nerves, there's less jitter, because you have a bullet point to make or a list to check off, sort of thing, and they do for you as well. So that whole nerves and tenseness, whatever you want to call it, that becomes easier, because now it's just two guys in a room sort of talking at this point, right? It's not there's less stress involved in that particular aspect.
And I think what we forgot to cover is a lot of the jobs we do in these day and age is before we even get to a face-to-face interview, especially with the COVID pandemic, we have a lot of phone interviews. There's a lot of that. So if you're going to have a phone interview, I guarantee the expectation for every interview I've held and being on the other side, on both sides of that, turn your webcam on. You need to have your webcam on.
Yeah, 100%.
Regardless. It's never written down. However, it is an expectation to see each other's faces. It does help.
It does. I agree 100% it does. Because interviews are naturally stuffy and full of tension already. Whatever you can do to sort of mitigate a lot of that and bring that tension level down a little bit to a manageable level. I mean, there's always going to be some there, but bring that down to a manageable level. I think that helps both you and them as well. Because, I've been on the other side of interviews that the hiring manager, they weren't that great. It was just as much a struggle for them as it was for me. Yeah, because
a lot of people can't articulate themselves or even get across the table of what they're trying, what they want. Like they can't even, they don't describe the job in a way that is understandable to the interviewee.
Yep.
Like they don't understand what they're getting themselves involved in. And when at high level, sometimes management don't explain themselves or their expectations particularly clear.
I agree. No, I agree with that. And I think and you touched on the first round of phone interviews. Most of the time that phone interview is a buffer, right? Somebody from HR getting through and just making sure you're not, a serial killer or anything like that. But they're not necessarily.
It is a check.
Yeah, they're not necessarily getting into the weeds and the nitty gritty. But I've had phone interviews with HR people that tried to talk tech with me. I have basically thrown it out there, and am I starting to talk tech and getting into that avenue? And then but the problem with that is those HR folks are reading buzzwords off of a paper that you have to check mark boxes, and they don't get any deeper than that. So you have to sort of tailor to your audience, I guess is probably the best word or phrase for that. So
you do need to know your audience, and you got to know if it's surface tech or if it's actually
exactly
you're getting into granular, actually book level.
Exactly. Because I've for a couple things, I've never gotten past the HR person because I didn't say the buzzwords that she had or they had on their paper. And I feel like that's a culture thing. That's sort of a look into the company on the inside. And, if they're going to throw an HR person at you for a technical position, even if it's just the screen, the person at the front door, at least tailor that conversation into your applicant's strengths. Don't try to sit there and talk tech because you're an HR person and that's not your day-to-day everyday job. Okay, you got a couple check marks you got to do on a paper. Okay, is he this, is he that, is he this, as far as from a person standpoint. But trying to throw buzzwords on a paper and judge your applicant by a person that really isn't in their department or in their everyday avenue, I feel like that's a disservice to most people.
Yeah, I agree with you, because effectively what you have there is someone unqualified judging someone who's
correct. 100%. That's a great way to put it.
If you walk in with a CCMP, I doubt someone from HR has a CCMP.
Correct.
Or a CCNA.
Right.
Very, very unlikely. And yet they're judging you on terms and words and buzzwords that they have no business.
Correct, because they don't know what it is. Yep.
Yeah, they don't know what it is. They don't know their level of understanding. And the other thing about acronyms is there's acronyms for everything.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So you don't even know which ones you're saying. So there's so many acronyms I hate acronyms because it's effectively meaningless depending on what industry you're in. So
they're empty.
It's very empty. It's completely empty. So you can shout all the buzzwords you want and it gets you somewhere, and it certainly gets you past the HR gate. But if you got a real pedigree engineer in the interview process, that's when you're really going to be shown for who you are.
Correct. And then kind of spinning off at that. So, and I've been in this spot before, and I'm sure, Dean, you have as well. But, when you're in that room and you're kind of going spar for spar back and forth with your hiring manager or whatever it is, they're bound to ask you a question that you don't know as far as from a technical perspective.
What's the worst thing you had in an interview? Because I don't think I tell my story in an interview, and not trying to one up anybody, but I've just never heard a more grueling story than myself and another engineer who I came up with, and it was just brutal. But I want to hear your one first. I want to give you the opportunity to see if you can best mine, but I've never heard of a story that's bested mine yet.
I don't know if I really have one, to be honest. Like I've applied for countless jobs, right? So I mean, it's just what it is. But I feel like some of them I walked into, and the hiring manager was not at the point in my career. He was, and one sticks out. And like I said, I won't mention names or anything, but this was forever ago. And I had my NA and things of that nature. And I walked into the interview, and I didn't know him, but him and I went to the same high school together. And he was like 3 or 4 years behind me. So he was younger than I was.
Okay.
But I think at the time he was like a 1-man, maybe 2-man, like IT shop for a small local bank here. And I'm like, how are you doing IT for a bank with like just yourself or just like, 1 or 2 other people? And as the interview went on, I felt like I was sort of showing him up with some of the skills that I brought to the table that he didn't know. And I feel like that was a very big turnoff for him. Because obviously,
that's interesting. I never heard anything like that before. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, like egos inside, and there's egos everywhere here. But it's like
tons of.
He wasn't about to hire me, and then me step in and have him look better to his boss than to him. But it was one of those kind of things. So like, I feel like that was the only like weird story that I really had. Like, there is a weird one, and this is more of a cross getting signals crossed, but. Not too long ago, I did interview for a place. This is before where I'm at now, but actually they're right down the street from each other. I interviewed for an MSP here in this area, and it was through a recruiter, and I basically did the whole thing and prepared like I normally do, and then so I went to the interview, and I stepped in the room. I met a few people. And just, kind of talked and it was really going well and things were progressing. But I noticed I was getting a lot of questions around voice, like Cisco voice. And I was like, it seems odd, like for a network engineer spot, like to focus heavy on like call manager and unified communications, voice type things. Oh, wow. And like, I answered where I could and this and that. And then they brought a VP in and, him and I really hit it off and this and that and the next thing. And okay, great. And I left and I called the recruiter that I got that I got set up through. I called him and I said, man, I thought it went pretty decent, but it was really heavy on the voice side. I thought it was more for very niche spot. The data side of the house. And he's like, yeah, that's interesting, blah, blah. So he's like, oh, let me see what I have. Let me make some calls. So he did. And he got back to me like a couple hours later. He goes, I'm so sorry. He said, there seemed to be a mix up. He goes, what happened is they had a job opening for both a UC voice engineer and a data engineer. But then basically by the time I got in there, they actually took the data engineer or the Cisco data engineer off the table and didn't tell my recruiter.
So you went in for a data engineer job, but they were hiring, they're recruiting you for a voice engineer.
Yeah, for a voice job. Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, like they didn't tell the recruiter in time or didn't tell him at all, whatever it was. And then I basically went in there. I thought I was going in for data, and then they thought I was here for voice, and then that's where our kind of signals were crossing. I was like, damn, that would have been a good spot.
So
I'm only so good
that,
for a voice
it?
guy. At the position I was in at the time, I probably would have. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I probably would have. I mean, to me, but like when I'm ready to leave a place, it has to be really, really bad to be like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. Like I don't passively look. Like I have to have a purpose to look because it just, at least that's for me. Like if I see something coming down there, and I've been in places where like the writing was on the wall sort of thing where management has changed or whatever. And they're like, whatever. So if I see something like that, like writing's on the wall, like, this is going to happen, sooner rather than later, then I'm like, all right, let's go sort of thing. But like things have to really be bad. Be like, oh my God, I hate my boss. I want to, whatever. Like that has to be really to that level to really stress me out to really say, okay, I got to go.
It's effort moving as well. Like a lot of effort.
It is. Yeah. It's a lot of effort. To the guys and gals out there getting into IT, like, don't be surprised if you move around a lot within your first 5 years. I mean, I've moved around.
It's all about finding that fit.
It's a fit.
Sure.
It's a total fit thing. And I've moved around a lot. And to some places, that is really a turnoff to say, okay, why has he had 6 jobs in the last, 8 years? It's like, well, in today's day and age, IT is sort of I don't want to say dime a dozen. That kind of that weakens it, but it's not as niche as it used to be.
Just be creative. I think if you had 6 jobs in 8 years, like you said, just be creative. Just say they're all contracting jobs. Say they're termed out 6 months, and you had to find them. No one can fault you for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, and I've done that. I was at a job for 8 months, or I was at a job for 2 years, and the wife yells at me all the time. I mean, well, my wife's a teacher, so I mean, once she basically. Once she gets her tenure, then she's like, yeah, I'm going to stay at this school for forever. And like, that's her mindset. Like, why can't you stay at a place for 10 years? I'm like, in IT, like, it doesn't work that way. Like, and I'm going to say this, and it may ruffle some feathers. It may be the truth. I don't know. What side of the house you fit on.
Ruffled. Ruffle them.
Really, in order to make money or to make the climb as fast as you can, you have to change jobs.
Absolutely. I second that.
In my position, in my career, I have very rarely been promoted within. There's always been factors there to, they always hire, they always look to hire, at least the places I've been, they've looked to hire outside before looking at their internal talent. And it's like, well,
Absolutely.
All right, if that's going to be the chance, that's going to be the change. So either I'm going to get the money and stay here for 5 years and then get the money, or I'm going to take that next job. I'm going to basically hop jobs and make it in a year. Like, to really make money and to really get to your titles. And some people like titles, senior XYZ. Some people don't really think they're worth the paper they're printed on. But,
you go to what job work for?
Exactly.
Work for money or titles.
Exactly. So to get your money and your titles, you have to move jobs. That's the only way you're going to do it in that small amount of time. And you don't really know how much time you really have. And for somebody that's aggressive, like I was early in my career, nothing was ever good enough. I was always looking for XYZ. I was always looking for that next, that next pay raise, that next job title. So if you're aggressive like I was, you're going to jump jobs in that particular time.
Yeah, I agree with that. You definitely will. And I would take it a step further and say I encourage it. Because that's the only real way you learn as well. Like I've had bosses who I've started jobs with, like Ericsson, for instance. He said, be here 2 years and move on. If you like, after 2 years, you've learned everything you need to know. Move on. That's the only way you get on in life. And he was telling me more. He was my manager, but he was telling me more of that as a friend. Like, you need to move on every 2 to 3 years because that's the only way you'll get on. If you're really good at something, organizations just keep you at doing that.
Yeah, so, no, I agree, and I wish managers would have told me that earlier on. A lot of managers spend time, blowing smoke, and I'm going to make you this, and I'm going to make you that. And it's like, well, then, why do I see all these people coming through the? Yeah, it is. It's like, why do I see all these people coming in for all these jobs and you're not even taking a flyer on me? Like, you know who I am.
Think about an organization
you.
standpoint, though. Even if it was me, I would rather take, if I had an internal candidate similar qualified to an external candidate, that external candidate is going to bring in a richer knowledge set.
Yep.
Think about, like, especially if you've been there for 5-10 years, you're institutionalized, like you're embedded in company culture. You've run out of ideas. You're not coming in fresh like when you would in a new organization. Like, oh, I've seen this somewhere else and we did it better. Let's do it this way.
Yep.
You don't really get that from people who you hire internally as opposed to externally. So I get why they do it. It does annoy people who are working internally and apply for those jobs, knowing well that they won't get them because that their eyes are set for someone externally. However, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I agree with you. I just feel that you really got to do your time when you apply for your job. Make sure you ask for money and the money you want, because you're not going to get another opportunity to negotiate your salary ever. Once you're in that organization,
they're not going to give it to you unless you don't ask.
The only time you're going to get another opportunity to negotiate your salary is when you start another job, and not another job internally. I mean, an external job. So I always say aim high, like aim ridiculously high, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only thing they can really do is come down and be like, all right, well, we'll pay you this. Down anyway. Maybe higher than what you originally wanted.
They're going to come down, regardless of what you say.
Yep.
If you say something 100%. Low, they're going to come down. So.
Yeah, exactly. So aim high and meet in the middle.
Yeah, precisely. That's your only shot.
That's it. So those were just a couple of things, and I feel like I see a lot of message boards out there with people saying, "Hey, I have an interview for XYZ next week," or "I have an interview for a security spot, or a networking spot, or a help desk spot," and like all these different people have all these different answers. So I felt like it would be a good topic to come and hang out and just basically talk a couple things of making that whole process easier. Both on you and then obviously on the company as well. Because the more fluid it is, the better that is. Because then it's not so stuffy, it's not so rigid. It really shines the people side of it. And to be honest with you, Dean, like getting a person to like you, getting a hiring manager to like you, could be all the difference. And you getting hired or you not getting hired. So using your soft skills and your personality, if you don't know the technical questions or anything like that. So fill that gap with, okay, I don't know that particular what he's asking technically. Fill that gap with your soft skills, your personality, because then that it does two things. It opens up to your hiring manager a little bit and lets him see the softer side of you, which most people do want. Most hiring managers want to make sure you're not just a rock sitting in a chair. And then, the other thing is it fills that, it fills that.
You want to show you're human some sort.
No, technically. Yeah, the human side does go for a lot, believe it or not.
It does. Sadly, like the world we're in, it actually goes for more than you think it does. No one wants to try it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, there is some empathy 100%. There, for sure. So, and I think hiring managers probably want you to lean into that more. It's not just binary in interview. It's not like, I have to know this, otherwise I don't get the job. It's not clear cut like that. And to be honest with you, a great attitude I learned from a company I used to work for when I never knew the answer was, I don't know that, but we can find out together. I think that's just a great statement.
Yep.
It just shows your willingness and your cooperation, that you may not know everything, but you're honest about it and that you're willing to learn and basically, put yourself out there to further your aspirations, knowledge, and understanding of what might be needed from you.
Yeah, I agree, and I think if you don't know, don't try to sit there and BS them, because a lot of people can see right through the BS. I know I can. Just be honest with them. Say, no, I haven't really worked with anything, in that particular. Like, for example, like when I took the job where I'm at now, I had no prior experience of what SD-WAN or working with SD-WAN. I had indirect experience with it when I was at Evolve IP. They were spinning up their own homegrown solution of SD-WAN at the time. And, there was a guy on the back end that configured it. And then I was basically, I dealt with it indirectly after it was all done and configured, but I had no part in actually configuring it. So when they asked me, I was like, no, I mean, I understand the concepts and what the purpose is and sort of the underbelly. But I have never actually pushed any buttons with SD-WAN. And I was honest with them, and they were like, okay, great, fine. And that they moved on. Right? It wasn't this huge sticking point of, oh my God, we need you to know XYZ.
Someone good at interviews would move on because there's nothing there.
Yeah. Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to,
correct.
You can't expect to interview an engineer and them know the whole ticket. And if they do know the whole ticket, prepared to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on that engineer. But for the real world, it's just not there. No one knows everything, but everyone has the capability of learning.
Yeah,
it's just not feasible.
It's too big out there. Yeah,
you can't know route and switch. You can't know wireless. You can't know security in data center in intrinsic depths. And
correct.
Have the understanding that we can all trip each other up in this industry. We all know something each other doesn't know. And we can all lord that over someone like, oh, I asked someone a question and they didn't know this particular aspect of that technology. So what?
Right. Who cares?
It doesn't mean anything.
Who cares? Yeah.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Okay, tell me how it works. I'll read it. I'll learn it for a night. And I know it tomorrow. Big deal. It's not that serious.
Moving on. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah. Did you have any other notes to throw into your hat into the ring here with those outside of what I covered?
No, I don't think so. My only 5 cents worth was I was just going to share my experience with the.
Oh yeah, sorry, I kind of railroaded that.
My gruesome one, the worst one I've ever had. It was when I finished my apprenticeship at Nokia Siemens Networks. I had 2 rounds of this interview. It was a technical one, and they were just asking insane knowledge on just 2G networks, 3G networks, how call setup works, all the elements and nodes that are involved in that. And then you had to, there was 3 principal engineers in there and a hiring manager. And not only were they asking questions, they were asking to draw on the board. So you had to go through and draw call setup, things of that nature, basically call handover, roaming, or how all that sort of worked. Yeah. And then once you explained all that, which took about 25, 30 minutes just to get through all of that and the different aspects of all of that, plus there was questions in between, they would say, okay, here's a laptop, show me. So you had to even show them, you had to log in and then show them the technology you were using. So let me put this into Cisco aspects. So that's just like saying, okay, you got your CCNA now, you go and you're a hiring manager. There's engineers in your in your interview on your panel, for instance, and they ask you, okay, how do you get to a website? Okay, so you say, okay, so you go to the web browser, you click on it, blah blah blah. Okay, easy. Now tell me the process behind that. So you have to tell them about the switching involved, perhaps using different VLANs, maybe some spanning tree, if you want to get eloquent, pretend if that's wired, wireless, if you're using security or not. And then not only on top of that, you had to show them actually on the platform. So they had a switch logged in for you on live network, and then you actually had to show them the technology. That's insane. I've never ever this interview was 2.5 hours. Because you had to show each aspect of the technology on the laptop, on a live network. It's just who put you through
that? right. Yikes.
It's just mean.
Yeah, that's above and beyond the Call of Duty.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Wow,
that's all I had.
No, I haven't had anything like that. Just a couple here and there, but I mean, usually interviews are stuffy and full of tension anyway. So. Do your best, do your homework, know who you're walking into, things of that nature. And all that sort of makes it a lot easier and less stuffy, less tense. Because obviously, once that temperature comes down for you, then, that whole process is much easier. So just a couple things that Dean and I, just a couple things Dean and I wanted to throw out there and kind of share a couple of our experiences with. So that was kind of it for that one. The other thing that we sort of thrown around and this kind of goes with company culture and what we talked about earlier with the interview process is, knowing what these companies think of IT. And when I say that, some companies put IT up there as far as, okay, if we put more into IT, then the back end runs, smoother, or actually the front end, it would be, the front end runs more smoother, more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. So there's companies out there that really invest in IT in that aspect to make their lives in their business run smoother. And then there's other companies out there that just see IT as a cost center on, and a number on a piece of paper, and they cut where they can, and they basically say, hey, you gotta, I want a Porsche performance on a Yugo, budget sort of thing. And it's like, you gotta basically string two cans, you got string and cans on each end and try to make it work. And most of the time it doesn't.
I think from what I've experienced in that kind of realm, it's all about leadership and how leadership in your organization perceive IT and how serious they're willing to take it.
100%
to others in the organization. If leadership don't deem IT important and feel that it can take the business to the next level, I personally wouldn't work for an organization like that, due to the fact it's bound to fail. Put it this way, as an engineer, you're not going to be taken seriously with your ideas or thoughts in the respect of business or company initiative. That can only really come from leadership. And if your leadership doesn't respect or even have an idea of what IT is, if their notions are IT is something that I can just get, I have a laptop, I can get out to the internet, then I don't know. I just think it's a tough spot. Yeah, you need someone more aware of what all the skills you can bring to the table, especially in the age of remote working as well. So you need leadership on board. And if you don't have leadership invested in IT, I don't think it's personally a good fit.
I couldn't agree more. And I've been at both, right? And I'm sure, Dean, you have as well. I've been at both places that really put a lot of stock in IT and thought and building out IT teams the way they're supposed to. But then that obviously shows on the front end of things, and it's a better, user experience, and technicians or whatever. And in my profession, I'm in the I work for a pest business now. So people that come to your houses on the handhelds, like they're getting better experience because the back end is so solid. So they're doing their jobs better, and they're hitting more calls a day, and traveling more homes a day, et cetera, et cetera. So, but then I've also been in places where, I couldn't get them to move off of the ASA 5505, and that thing's 20 years old. So it's like, and they're like, oh, well, next budget. That next budget never comes. No, ever. So, I've been there. So, and you're not necessarily going to know that when you sit down in an interview like that, but it's something
it's clear though. You be there a couple of months, and you'll have an idea or something obvious will be in your environment, and you'll raise it. And you'll be like, why are we doing that? Or why have we not moved on yet? And generally a silly answer will come.
You're right. You're 100% right. And I think so even if you do take that job and, the interview goes well and they hire you, whatever you want to call it, you're going to notice red flags in the first couple of months. Cause like Dean said, something silly is going to happen, and they're going to go, oh, well, why don't you do this, Band-Aid this until next year? And then, whatever. And it's like, all right, so that's a red flag, because normally when they say that just means they're kicking the can down the road, and next year never quite comes. Trust us, Dean and I have been there. It's a mess. And now, okay, that thing is broke once. It's going to happen again. There's no doubt it's going to happen again. And now this time, what else is it going to break with it? Like, what important thing is it doing that particular minute that it's going to break? And now you got people screaming at you going, why doesn't this work? Well, it doesn't work because this thing's 20 years old, and we're going to use Cisco again because that's the realm Dean and I live in. This ASA is not meant to do all this packet, the IPS and IDS stuff that isn't needed in today's networks. Those 5505s are babies. They're not meant for that. So when it does break in that aspect, when it breaks in that aspect and something happens or whatever, it's going to happen again. And then they go, well, why doesn't this work? This thing's 20 years old. It's not meant to go forever. And there's a lot of companies out there that literally run this stuff into the ground and only upgrade or only get new gear because they have to. Like that's just the long and short of it. And you have to find out which ones are those. And then once you find them out, run, because it doesn't get any better.
Yeah, nor is your on-call either. It's going to be constantly.
And that's what I mean too. That's the other thing. Yeah, the on-call is a mess, and and I've been in places, again, not trying to throw any names out there, but I've been in places that use all kinds of different gear, and this comes back to sort of finding your niche, because I've been in places that they deploy WatchGuard, they deploy Sonic walls. They go out and get a new client, and that client has a Ubiquity, and now you're scoping across multiple vendors, multiple things, and there's, now your guys are forced to know all these different vendors, and they all do things a little differently, right? So
and not like, saying like you can't allow customers to have whatever gear, dictate and have whatever gear they want, because when it comes to support, okay, Ubiquity might be easy to support, but not everyone knows how to support that.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been part of shops like that where it's just, just get them through. Well, it breaks 2 weeks later and I'm getting them through again. Like that road never ends. It never comes to a full stop and be like, all right, no, this is the 6th time in 8 months this thing is broke. We're going to get you something that's decent in there. And then they go, oh, well, the customer's never going to pay for that. Well, how do you know? You don't ask, and you don't sell the long term. All you're thinking about is the price tag on when the bill comes.
That box costs. Yeah.
That's what I mean.
You got to pitch it differently, though. You got to have that aspect of like, well, we're losing so much money here because packets are dropping because this piece of ASA is not up for the job anymore. It's just like you can't have all that intrusion detection system and prevention system, and then it doing VPN traffic, site-to-site traffic, and IP. That for 50, that's insane. You can't do all that.
It's insane. And, and again, once you get in there and you kind of get into the day-to-day stuff of your job, you're going to notice red flags right off the bat. It just is what it is. So you'll know if you're a part of a good company or not, as far as from an IT perspective, because they, the good ones actually have an IT life cycle, right? So, hey, this is, Cisco announced this end of life last year. And after, in the Cisco world, once it's announced end of life, you have, I think it's 5 years to get that out of your production environment to get to the new one, sort of thing. So a lot of them, you really have to know, all right, your life cycles and keeping ahead of the curve sort of thing. But a lot of people just look at, okay, what's this going to cost me right now? But they don't know what the long end of it is. And this is why I try to explain, at least to the companies I've been at, I've tried to explain, look, okay, this ASA is $1,500 up front, but I'm literally touching that thing twice a year. And that thing is for upgrades, right? And this thing is going to last you at least 6 years, 5-6 years, whatever it is, because Cisco hardware literally runs forever. So you take that $1,500
but you can't divide it by... Don't say Cisco hardware, because this is the problem with management. They hear that part, Cisco hardware runs forever, and then they want to keep that piece of hardware forever. But the application and what we're doing with that now has changed. So yes, it would run forever, but like
I don't necessarily want it to.
Yeah. I don't want to play the original Xbox because the graphics ain't as good as the new one.
Yeah,
so you need to move with the times.
I agree. But the point I was trying to make is, okay, look, you can do the ASA for $1,500 now, or you can go for that WatchGuard for $400. But I'm going to be touching that thing, a handful of times a year because it's broke, and my time is $250 per hour, and I'm rounding to the nearest hour. So really, which one is cheaper in the long run? You know what I mean? Like, getting companies to see that long game is not all of them, and but I've been a part of a few of them. It's really hard to get them to see that long game because all they think is dollars and cents, and that's a tough spot to be in, because now you have guys at the C levels that don't really know what happens at this particular level, making decisions and buying gear, or at least being the money pit of it, not understand what happens at this level, and they're just trying to get under their bottom line, and that's unfortunately that's a lot of it.
It's not always the right way. There's a lot that needs to be considered what vendor you're selecting, and the cheapest one doesn't necessarily always mean the best.
Yep.
But frankly, yeah. So
agreed.
yeah,
it's normally not.
It's a tough one, and if you're not, I would definitely agree with that. It's a tough one because these C-suite managers don't have that level of understanding. It's not just the hardware; it's the application. What's it actually? What's the box actually doing? And I don't know. If I had the control, if I worked for a small enough company, I would probably be evil and make sure that their packets would drop all the time. Just to prove a point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I would do some profiling and put them on the worst one, like best efforts or something like that, just to prove my point. But
I've thought about it. Trust me.
That's how I go to prove a point. But I'm not also condoning that either. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit. I thought about it. Trust me, I thought about it.
So that's all I have, Pat.
Yeah, that's kind of just knowing your environment. Obviously, you're not gonna know everything about them in that half-hour interview that you go and sit at. But just be aware of that in your everyday life. Saying, okay, look, you kind of know what your company's doing. Either they really do take your word for it, or at least let you have a hat in the ring, sort of thing. Or they're just going to do what they want to do, and just go by the money book. And normally, if it's that short-sighted with the money piece of it, your long game usually isn't in great shape either. Because it's either one or the other. And it's unfortunately it's the short game that's played a lot rather than the long game. Yeah. But it is what it is. So just be aware of that. Obviously, it's like that song, money rules everything around me. That is very, very true in today's IT world. And obviously a lot of other aspects as well. But if you can articulate why you need XYZ and give them something to think about, or not just say, okay, well, we're going to go with this because it's $400. If you can articulate, okay, this is a box. Yeah, it's $1,500, but it does XYZ. And 2 years down the road, we want to have more remote workers than we do people in the office. And then, okay, so, licensing and fitting more people on a box and, things of that nature. If you start to get into that underbelly, it at least makes them stop and say, okay,
there's
maybe
more to this than just the price. Yeah, that's all you
Correct.
need to know.
Correct.
There's a concept like when you go out and maybe buy a steak, you don't buy the cheapest steak, do you?
No.
You know what I mean? You're looking at what it has to offer, or you don't buy the cheapest car you have.
Yep.
You look at things and you look at, do I need something at that level?
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
The same applies for an IT industry. You don't just buy the cheapest product. You buy what you need.
It usually shows at the back end, and we're not saying go out and buy the Cadillac or buy the Porsche or the Tesla.
The IT department will love you for that. Don't get me wrong.
I know.
You get a lot of points for buying nice new shiny gear. But usually, I'm not saying you have to do that.
No. But I'm saying is usually the solution is in the middle, right? It's not
for sure.
It's not cheap, but it's not the Rolls Royce, right? It's somewhere in the middle where people can agree on, okay, yeah, I can do this, or this will fit the need.
It's a good business conscious decision where it's had involvement in multiple departments, and they've expressed their needs of what they need out of the solution, and the money guy takes that all into consideration and gets the product that's fit for the bill, basically.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. So just those are a couple different things we wanted to get across and just kind of set expectations, because that's what we're about here, right? Just setting expectations and knowing what you're getting into.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of it. Dean, do you have anything else to chat here before we get out of here?
No, that's it for me today. Thank you, though.
Cool. Absolutely. Yeah, that was cool. So we're going to wrap this one up. Try not to take too much of your time, because I know these can sort of drown on and whatnot, but we'll be back for more in the next couple of episodes. We have some cool guests coming up as well, so just stick with us. And we got some cool stuff lined up. We're just trying to get schedules worked out with some people. So thanks again for joining us this week for episode 5 of So You Want to Be in IT. And then make sure you visit our website, soyouwanttobein.buzzsprout.com, where you can subscribe to the show. You can actually listen to the show right from there, or you can subscribe to it from your favorite platform, right? iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, pretty much anywhere there's an RSS feed, we are there. So throw us a rating on iTunes. That'd be awesome. That helps with the algorithms and gets us to the top of the fresh and new list. So that'd be really cool. Or simply tell a friend, right? So IT related or not, right? So maybe you're getting into IT, or maybe you're in IT and you've been in it like Dean and I, but a friend that's, that's sort of on the fence about it. So tell him about it, tell him about the show, and, see where he lands. So that would be cool too. And then obviously, follow us on all of our social media. So we're Twitter at So You Want to Be in IT, and then Instagram, the same handle at So You Want to Be in IT, and then Facebook.com/So You Want to Be in IT. And then I forgot to mention this the last couple of closing shows, but our Discord server, we have a Discord server chat spun up for you guys. So the invite is in the show notes of all of our episodes. So go and grab an invite and come hang with us. We love talking to you guys, and there's all kinds of stuff in there, right? Career advice, or just talking in general to other IT guys, or certification, off topic, pretty much anything, show notes. So if you guys have a show topic or an idea you want us to talk about, there's a channel in there for that too. So drop us some lines there to see what we're doing. And if you have something to contribute to the show, that'd be awesome. So that's it, Dean. I think that's it. We're going to get out of here. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for episode 6.
Is there anybody there? Oh,